Edwin had left his Tesla Model Y parked outside of his home in San Diego, California, when a guy walking past came up with a brilliant idea. He picked up a large rock and threw it into the Tesla before running away like a scared little boy. Edwin got a notification that his alarm had been triggered and ran out to find the rock lying in his car's back seat. Needless to say, it was not a pleasant discovery. Sadly, the coward responsible was long gone. Edwin called the police and made a report when officers responded. The initial repair bill is $3,000, but it might increase since the trim is scraped and the interior door panel is also damaged. If you recognize this criminal, send us a message or contact the San Diego Police Department. Steven had parked his Model Y in New York City when a man casually walked past it while dragging a key along the passenger side rear door and quarter panel. The man then continued along with his stroll as if nothing had happened, but Sentry Mode had seen the whole thing, and it looks like another guy did too. This is actually the second time Steven's Tesla has been keyed. The same thing happened a few weeks prior, and only 3 days after those repairs were complete, it happened again. The first repair cost around $4,300. Steven hasn't begun repairs for the new scratch, but he expects the repair quote will be about the same. Sadly, the front camera didn't capture the vandal's face since he crossed the street, but if you recognize his clothes or know who he might be, send us a message. After Mr. Wu had parked his Model Y in the visitor parking lot of his friend's condo, an angry man keyed the side of it. The vandal made sure nobody was watching by hanging around the car for a while and smoking a cigarette, but he didn't realize Sentry Mode was watching the whole time. When Mr. Wu returned, he noticed the guy watching him drive away, but he didn't confront him at the time because he didn't realize he was the one who'd keyed his Tesla until he checked his Sentry Mode footage later. He called the cops and filed a police report. The cops were surprised to know Tesla's Sentry Mode captures all 4 sides of the car. Once they saw the footage, they were prepared to arrest the criminal, but by then he was gone and the police weren't able to locate him. Now, Mr. Wu is hoping to get a reimbursement through his insurance provider so he can fix the damage, but they've already told him that he'll have to pay his deductible, about $725 unless the criminal can be identified and held responsible. You know what to do. If you know who this guy is, let us know or call the Scarborough Police. Patrick's wife was driving their Model 3 down a highway in Toronto when the driver of a BMW X5 suddenly accelerated from the exit lane. The BMW driver tried to slip across to the passing lane, and I know you won't believe this, but he didn't even bother using his turn signal. At the same time, an SUV driver tried to make the same maneuver. Sadly for them both, a semi-truck was blocking their views of each other. The BMW driver got startled and lost control and crashed into the barrier before making a 360-degree spin. Once Patrick's wife returned home, Patrick retrieved the Teslacam footage and called the police, but they told him they didn't need the footage, as the case had already been transferred to the collision department. We don't really know what a collision department does, but if they don't have any use for actual video footage of a collision, they must be pretty good at whatever it is that they do. Ravi was driving his Tesla Model X and waiting for a traffic light in a turn lane. Watch what happened 10 seconds after the light turned green. A silver Ford F-350 sped through the red light and crashed into a black Chevy Tahoe, sending it crashing into the side of Ravi's Tesla. Ravi called the police before checking on the other drivers. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. The Tahoe had been filled with luggage, which was spread all over the intersection after the wreck. The whole thing happened so fast, he didn't know who was at fault until he watched his Teslacam video, which he immediately shared with the responding police. The driver of the silver Ford was deemed responsible, but he wasn't actually the owner of the pickup, which complicated the insurance process even further. Repairing the side of Ravi's Model X ended up costing $12,000. Sander was driving his Model Y down a highway in Belgium, and when traffic ahead of him started slowing down, not everyone behind him followed suit. A white van crashed into a Volvo, shoving it into a Volkswagen before it crashed into Sander's Tesla. Police and firefighters responded to the scene. The Volvo and the van were both totaled, but Sander's Tesla and the VW are being repaired. Matthew's 10-month-old Model 3 was T-boned when another driver pulled out of a servo, which is what Aussies call their gas stations. After the collision, Matthew asked the other driver what she was doing, and she shouted that she couldn't see if anyone had been coming down the road. He asked her why she had pulled out if she couldn't see, and she didn't have any response to that. At first, Matthew hadn't realized how serious the impact was, as his Tesla had absorbed the impact incredibly well, but when he returned to his car, he quickly realized it would likely be totaled. The B-pillar was torn and bent, and the left camera was completely ripped off, which explains why the camera feed cut out after the impact. Matthew was waiting to hear back from his insurance provider after the repair shop totaled his Model 3. He plans to replace it with a refreshed Highland Model 3 in blue. Mike's wife Heather was driving to visit her mother one morning. As she went straight through a green light, an oncoming driver turned left across her lane, even though she had the right-of-way. The other driver's insurance provider found him at fault after seeing the Teslacam video. Repairing the Tesla took 4 months and $7,700 US. We should clarify that Mike didn't have to pay $7,700. That's how much the other driver's insurance provider paid to repair Mike's Tesla. Mike pays a monthly insurance premium, around $100 to $200 for most Tesla owners. If he's in a collision, his insurance provider will pay for the repairs, unless it's someone else's fault, and then their insurance provider pays the bill. Class dismissed. This submitter had just picked up a buddy from the St. Louis Lambert International Airport and was heading home shortly after midnight. He admits he wasn't paying the most attention when he decided to overtake the car in front of him using the passing lane. All he remembers is suddenly seeing headlights coming toward him, giving him mere seconds to react. He swerved toward the middle lane, but he told us he also felt the Tesla's side collision avoidance step in to keep him from hitting the SUV on his right. Even though he wasn't using autopilot or the FSD beta, he told us he felt the Tesla assisting his steering. He's glad the SUV moved over to give him space, but the wrong-way driver still ended up impacting the driver's side of his Tesla. He pulled over and stopped on the shoulder and called the police to report the wrong-way driver. They responded immediately and began searching for the driver. Sadly, they never did find the other vehicle or its driver, and the license plate number is impossible to read in the Teslacam video. Our submitter had to file an insurance claim with his own insurance provider. Repairs took 3 months, and the bill came to just over $12,000 US. Ivan was driving to get groceries in New York City one rainy day when he began backing into a parking space across the road from the store. Another vehicle drove straight into his Tesla, snapping off the left wheel's axle and completely immobilizing it before the driver fled the scene. Unable to pursue them, Ivan called the police and they quickly responded. The other vehicle had a Massachusetts license plate, but the police weren't able to locate it in their system, leading them to believe it may have been stolen. Ivan's car is still in the shop waiting for a final repair quote, but the initial estimate is over $15,000 US, which Ivan's insurance provider will be covering. Don had left his Tesla parked at a meter in Harrison, New Jersey one day while rehearsing his part in a community theater play. When he came back to his Model Y a few hours later, he discovered this Sentry mode footage. His car captured a driver showcasing their driving skills while attempting to park in the spot behind Don's Tesla before backing into it. The other driver got out to examine the damage to both vehicles, but then they left the scene. Plenty of people were around, but nobody reported the collision. Don is upset that so many people witnessed the incident, yet none of them wanted to get involved. Thankfully, he has this Sentry mode footage. Thanks to this video, he was able to see the collision, get the responsible driver's license plate number, and give it to the police so they could hold him accountable. Repairing his Tesla cost $14,000 US, and since Don was able to track him down, the other guy's insurance provider had to pay the repair bill. We assume he also faced a hefty fine for committing a hit and run. Are we starting to understand how insurance works, kids? Awesome! We've all heard of phantom braking, but have you ever heard of phantom wheels? Kenny was driving down a highway headed home after dinner with coworkers when a phantom wheel appeared from the right and rolled across his lane, almost hitting his car. The wheel continued across every lane of the highway, somehow without hitting any cars or causing any collisions. Suraj was driving down a stretch of highway where he says commuter buses often cut across 4 lanes to reach an exit, so he knows to be extra cautious around them. After a bus came from the express lane and merged in front of him, traffic in his lane came to a halt, so the bus driver tried to quickly return to the express lane. Sadly, this decision would prove disastrous when the bus crushed a pickup truck in the express lane against the median barrier. Suraj told us this is just another normal day for a Bay Area bus driver. This next video comes to us from Canada, where one driver decided she'd had enough of the snow and opted not to clear it off her car before heading out that morning. When the Mercedes driver backed out, Sarge's wife had no chance to stop before it collided with her Tesla. The Mercedes driver had her kids with her in the car. Her airbags deployed, but thankfully, nobody was injured. She immediately apologized and accepted fault, another thing we'd expect from a Canadian submission. She was cited for failing to yield while leaving a driveway and for not clearing the snow off her vehicle. Luke and his father— wait a second. Okay, we've almost made it through the episode with no dad jokes, so I'll try to keep it together. Anyway, they were marching along at 50 miles per hour, to use the imperial unit of measurement, so you might say it was a sort of imperial march. Suddenly, they encountered a driver whose hyperdrive was not engaged as they began slowing down in the middle of the highway. Another driver behind them wasn't prepared for that and smashed into the slowing vehicle. Perhaps that driver hadn't been watching through their viewport. Either way, Luke's father turned to him, stared into his eyes, and uttered that classic line,
"Luke, I am your father."
See you all next week, and a huge thanks to our patrons who keep this show on the road.
Hyperdrive.